Hey, Meoni here with another Tera dungeon guide for you. This time we're looking at one of the endgame instances for level 60s only. This is Fane of Kaprima, or Fane of Kaprima, depending on how you want to pronounce that. So Fane has some new boss encounter mechanics which require more team-based play than previous instances in the game, which I'll go into detail as we get to them. So the trash in this instance is particularly AoEable really, and doesn't really pose much of a threat, so we're going to skip past all that trash in the dungeon and show you only the boss fights, and tell you how to do them, like usual. So let's go straight in with boss number 1. This is officially known as Lowgrin and Agartha. I say officially known, as you're only likely to ever notice one boss here, Lowgrin, if you do it correctly. But a key mechanic here introduces another boss, out of sight Agartha, who stands on the balcony behind Lowgrin, and you should be able to see her if you look up. During the fight she will jump down quite often, and once she lands she will cast a mega powerful spell that's a one-shot of everyone in the room. So obviously there's a key mechanic behind this, prevention, so as always with boss fights. To counter this, all you need to do is destroy one of the 4 pillars which will spawn on the outskirts of the room once the encounter begins. Each pillar awards the group a bubble, which lasts 5 seconds and grants immunity from all damage for that same duration. This is where before mentioned teamwork will come in. You need to time blow attacks to pillars according to Agartha. Now, remembering that Agartha will instantly cast her deadly spell once she hits the ground and not when she jumps or when she is in the air, is the key. You have to time it perfectly or waste a buff and wipe. The best way we found to give you enough time to destroy the pillar is to knock it down to 1 to 2 hits of HP. Reserve one party member to do this so it's not a clusterfuck and you accidentally take one of them down, and the rest to focus on the boss. This way, when Agartha is in the air, you can one-hit it and be fine, which maximizes the DPS output on the boss and makes the fight more structured. So what's left to mention is that Agartha does her first fall to the floor at around 80% HP of Lowgrin. This gives you a window to DPS the boss as well as do the pillars quite easily here. If you manage to do this with no hitches or timing errors, this boss will be really easy for you. A few other tips will help you here. Lowgrin should be tanked in the center of the room to keep the pillars on the outside of the room away from his AoE damage as much as possible, as that could throw you off completely and cause potential wipes. If you do manage to mess things up, Agartha's attack can actually be dodged by abilities like Death from Above from warriors, but not everyone has a similar ability that can stay in the air long enough for the ability to go off to avoid it. So this isn't really recommended, but if you had a team that could potentially do this, with maybe 1 or 2 warriors or something similar that could, it could be potentially salvageable to res up the healer, etc. Obviously Lowgrin himself has his usual abilities, such as his 180-degree cleave in a cone in front of him, a charge with a jump combo that randomly chooses a player to go after, a stomp that causes AoE damage at his feet, and a jump that jumps with moderate damage at random locations in the room. Bear all of these elements in mind and you should really be fine. So let's kill this son of a bitch and move on. This second boss of the 4 in here is Agartha, a giant crab. This really requires only basic guiding, as Agartha is very much a fight you either fail at yourself, or you do with no problems at all. I speak of a mechanic which questions the awareness of your party members. On the walls there is 4 holes. These 4 holes have spikes that come out of them, just after they start spinning. 2 of them come out at once, and those spin before coming out. The other 2 stay stationary and do not come out. This fight relies on your party simply looking at the walls, seeing which spikes are spinning, and ready to come out, moving to a safe zone near spikes that are not moving, or die. The fight itself is no harder and no different than a BAM sort of crab outside the instance, with no real changes. The moving of the spikes is also noted by an emote that goes off, saying, Agartha's drill is moving. The safe zones as previously mentioned on this fight can be the opposite side of a room, but one is spinning, or between the drills themselves. The crab itself has a powerful backstab tail attack, which delivers deadly damage to anyone who stands immediately behind him, so you really need to DPS from the sides on this guy, not the usual rear. Aside from a 180-degree sweep cleave and the usual crab abilities such as a front combo attack, this guy is extremely easy compared to the previous fight. So let's just move on after this guy dies and move on to a real encounter. The third encounter, Cornus, is an interesting encounter to say the least, which requires again more team-oriented work than just mindless DPS, which is a great thing. So the room is split into two sectors divided by a bamboo wall down the middle with a gap in it. When Cornus drops to 70% and 35% HP respectively, you will receive a message that you have to kill Agartha, which spawns on the first sector of the room you walked into. One of your group members needs to go and kill her, and one of them alone. If you fail to kill Agartha in time, she will cast many overlapped red circles in the boss's room, which will deliver high damage to anyone who stands on them. Although the room will be, in this particular instance, be completely filled with these things and usually wipe you, there are actually blind spots in the room you can avoid damage from them, but let's not even have that happen. So 70% and 35%, that woman spawns in the first half of the room. Send one of your DPS to that room, preferably somebody who can take a lot of damage, and that person has to do the following. In there, Agartha will have 3 mages spawn with her, whom cast fireballs, which are slow moving and track at you. All you have to do is kite them so they hit Agartha instead of you to kill her. Bear in mind you can survive getting hit by the fireballs yourself, but you will be reliant on your own healing and you will need to kill Agartha in time, which requires you to hit her with the majority of these balls. A tip here is for your healer to stand in the divider between the two sections of the room to heal both, but to be honest you shouldn't need to do that if the DPS does his job correctly. So that is the rinse-repeat mechanic that wipes everybody regularly in this instance that I see in pugs, but there are other things to be concerned about within this fight. Cornus himself summons a Guardian Priest portal at 80, 60, 40 and 20% respectively of HP. These portals are obelisk type things that need to be destroyed as soon as they are up. If you do not kill them as soon as they are up, they will spawn adds, and these adds make the fight unbelievably difficult to manage, as they obliterate party members fast with high bolts of damage to people on high aggro tables. If you do get an add spawn, you need it nuked as soon as possible and back onto the boss. For reference, priority in this instance is portal add boss, in that order. Failure to do so usually results in a wipe. The rest of the fight is fairly straightforward past these mechanics, with Cornus himself having basic attacks and a charge similar to a Lancer's charge that you will need to avoid as well. Once your team has mastered this communication-heavy encounter, smash his face in and move on to the last area of the dungeon. Boss number 4, Kaprima. This is Kaprima, the final boss of this instance, which requires a lot of movement by all players in here. This particular encounter is all about the boss's own abilities and how you can avoid the damage. There isn't any mechanics other than his own abilities to worry about, but I'm sure you'll have your hands full anyway. So let's look at said abilities. The first ability is Scythe of Flames. This move puts multiple circles in front of the boss and delivers lots of fire damage to anyone who stands in them. Do not stand in front of him. Deadly Maneuver. Randomly the boss will turn around and hit the floor with his scythe, which delivers massive damage to anyone behind him. The safest spots on this fight are the sides at range. Another move, Death of 360, delivers a high to near one-shot AoE to a target group member and puts a red circle on the ground beneath their feet. This is impossible to move from unless you move as soon as possible and dodge roll like mad. Use your dodge moves to get away from it as soon as possible, as the circle chases you extremely fast. Timing is everything here and could result in someone dying, very important, that you will need later on. Lots of reses are probably quite commonplace on this fight. Also remember that this is an AoE, so moving into another group member will probably kill them, so don't do that. Kaprima also does a chain pull ability, this AoE chain pull, where the boss will chain pull everyone within melee range of the boss and unleash a 360 degree one shot. You're going to need to move away as soon as you get control of your character again, because you lose control when he pulls you in, or you will die. Just run away. If the boss at any time shouts, "Puny creatures, I'll kill you all," he will cast a pentagram on the floor beneath him, but this time the damage is much higher than normal. And if he shouts, "You're all flies compared to my might," he'll cast the exact same pentagram on the floor with the same deadly damage, but with double the range this time. Although visually it is exactly the same, it is much more spread out, which means run much further away than normal if you want to survive. Another boss move is when he summons a runic obelisk from 50% HP and then every subsequent 10% after that. He will cast this obelisk in the center of the room and pull everyone to him. The obelisk will disappear and a snake statue will spawn somewhere in the room. As you gain control from the mass pull, head in the direction of the snake statue and stand behind it, out of line of sight of the boss. If you are in line of sight of the boss at any time during this point, he will one-shot kill you. This is pretty much all there is for Kaprima. Congratulations, if you followed these abilities and understood how to avoid them, you have killed a god, and as such deserve a cookie. My name's Meoni, and I hope you've enjoyed my guide of Fane of Kaprima. Feel free to subscribe for more videos daily above, leave a comment below and say hello and let me know what you think. And thank you for watching my guide, and I'll see you next time. Laters.